Hi, this is Michael Talis with the Talis Team. Today I'm sitting down with Tom McGinley, and he's a contractor with really long and extensive experience, both in commercial space and in residential. He came up with a new business idea, and as far as I know, he's the only person who offers this type of services to buyers and sellers, and generally people who own homes, homeowners. So Tom, why won't you introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Tom McGinley, and I live in Campbell, California. For many years, I was a general contractor, construction manager, owner's representative, and I still am. Recently, I retired, and I was looking for some kind of job to keep me busy part-time. What happened was somebody came to me and said, I'm a realtor, and I have a buyer, and they want to buy this house, but it needs a new roof, and it has lots of things that are kind of wrong with it in the condition report, but it's a really good price. And so they don't know how serious that is. And so I met them out there, and the buyer was a nice guy, and we talked about the house for about an hour. We talked about the roof, and then what kind of plumbing changes it needed. And we also talked about things he might want to do to it, like model the kitchen, move this wall, and change, add a bathroom. And from my perspective, these were all very easy questions. From his perspective, these were things that really helped him, because I could tell him, oh, don't add the bathroom there, add it over here because the plumbing's already in the wall, and that'll make it a lot cheaper. The roof, you better take care of right away.
Because the house will deteriorate as it gets wet.
And so that type of information, along with some ballpark pricing, allowed him to make his decision. And, the way the market is today, if you decide to buy it at 1 o'clock, you better have your offer in by 2.
Well, just to inject a few numbers, last month, median time on the market was 7 days. So half of the homes that came to the market were sold in 7 days or less, and average was just 11. We haven't seen 11-day average ever in MLS history. To share with our listeners how fast everything moves.
I do actually several things, but for new buyers or prospective buyers, I go out with the broker and the buyer, and after reviewing the condition report and the termite report, tour the property, and just verbally tell them what it would cost to do this, what I really think about the stuff in the condition report, and then I follow that up. They get the numbers and everything right there. But sometimes it's confusing. So I follow that up for a written report, because they get so much information in 1 or 2 hours. A little spreadsheet so they can play with it themselves later on. And it's very simple, and it's been very helpful.
I can imagine that's one of the questions I'm getting when we're touring homes, is like, how much will be to remodel the kitchen? And I probably have some kind of an idea, but again, it's such a huge range that without experience, it's very hard to narrow it down. How much time do you need to produce a written report? Again, we were talking about how fast people need to get the information.
Usually email them the written report the next day.
Oh.
That's just a review of what we've already talked about.
It's like a summary.
Yeah, it's a summary. So if the kitchen's $100,000 approximately, they know that when we take the initial walk. And I just write it down. And
that's a really nice kitchen.
The reason I do the written summary is because I've run into a couple of them where I needed to do some research.
Oh.
Especially when you get into heat pumps and air conditioning combination systems in older 2-story homes.
Oh, interesting.
There, you can talk to somebody about air volume and whether it's practical in a house like that to keep a backup gas heating system. And so I run into things that I really don't know about. And I can,
so how long have you been in construction, and there are still things you don't know?
No, and so, but I can recognize there could be a problem there. So I want to go and get some information, get some help, and then give them a valid answer. And sometimes For a few things, that's the next day. But most of them, the summary is just a repeat of what we've talked about.
Got it. Yeah, that definitely will help people to make decisions faster and with higher confidence, because we're talking about multi-million-dollar purchases, and without knowing what they're stepping in, it's really hard to be confident that you're buying a real thing, not a lemon.
Yeah.
Well, so you also mentioned that you work with homeowners on projects and helping them understand the bidding process and finalize their hiring decisions.
So aside from talking to prospective buyers, it's kind of evolved into a second step, and that is after people get the house, or people who just have one, and they want to do some work inside of it. And those typically would be, gee, some of it's pretty simple. I want to put a new oven hood in the kitchen, or I want to, renovate my bathroom.
Right.
I want new flooring. What are my options and stuff like that? It's not really hard to envision this stuff, but sometimes there are little nuances that make the project better in one sense or better in another sense. And so I can help them with design, like for instance, where can I get a good kitchen design? How do I go about doing that? What's it likely to cost? And then when they get that, how do I make it all happen? In other words, do I want to get different people or one contractor? Do I want to get a flooring guy and let somebody hang the cabinets? And there are a lot of yes or no decisions. For larger jobs, people who might want to do a large room addition out back,
down to the studs.
I help them find an architect, and so they can get a good design of it.
Right. It's critical. I've seen some designs where you cannot place furniture after the home addition was done. They didn't think about where the couch will go and where the TV will end up. And well, the square footage is there, but it's more or less unusable. Yeah, I can understand that. We've seen projects people doing in hundreds of thousands. So it's starting getting closer to the level of commercial products in terms of the amount of money involved. So tell me about your commercial experience.
Actually, I started out, I'll give you an overview of the whole trail here. I started out as a remodeling contractor. Construction is the family business. And I did that.
So you were born into it.
I was born at this, right? I actually was in graduate school and I thought, I'm going to be a terrible lawyer. I better go to work. And so I did remodeling for quite a while, then kind of evolved into other types of work, and actually ended up, through no fault of my own, specializing in institutional construction.
Mm-hmm.
Schools and prisons. Schools and prisons are actually quite similar in the way that
Okay.
as a teenager, they'll tell you that.
No, yeah. Well, I used to be a teenager some years ago, but
and so I've also taught construction at construction management at the college level for San Diego University for many years, and I've also directed the Builders Exchange in Mateo County. And about 6 months ago, I basically retired, and that's how this all started.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
I have a lot that it's active, but I don't build any longer.
Right. Sometimes people need an advocate on their side who understand the shenanigans that some of the less scrupulous contractors or suppliers will pull on them. I had my own bad experiences when people really say that they can do the work, but they are not qualified, and they end up doing a work that has to be redone. Yeah. And having somebody like you on the owner's side will help avoid things like that. So what kind of areas are you working in?
Basically San Mateo and Santa Clara County. That's a good range of things. There's enough work in there to keep me busy.
No, that's great. That's actually where I work. My office is in Los Altos, and we typically go from Morgan Hill to San Mateo and sometimes all the way to South San Francisco, but that's the same range. In terms of your involvement, I understand with the buyers, it may be a short-term thing, but with the homeowner advocacy, how long are you typically getting involved with, and do you manage projects? Can you help them manage a project?
Yeah, actually, much less than you'd think. I don't think anybody has even been billed $1,000 yet. It's a lot of small assistances. Once you set the project up
Hmm.
and you get a project control budget, you review the cost centers of the project, you develop a bid strategy, and you get the bids. That's maybe 10 hours most.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then you evaluate the bids and they get the contractor. At that point, there's generally not much more to do. If you've done it right and you've gotten a good contract and you've covered all your bases, there's not going to be any real problems on that job.
Got it.
I don't, they may call me up for the job's finished party the next time they hear from me.
That's that.
I'll tell you a couple of things that have happened in process. I had one guy put in a sewer clean out wrong, and it wasn't he didn't tamp the earth. We simply called him back up and said, hey, that wasn't packed enough. He came out the next day and fixed it.
Right. But recognizing it, that's where the experience comes in. For a lot of homeowners, what we typically recommend, if you're doing a project, do it with permits, because the city coming in and checking the work of the contractor, approving each stage is also helpful. Maybe not the most efficient way to get somebody on your side, but that's one of the things we typically recommend on larger projects, especially if it involves plumbing or electrical. Cosmetic stuff is, in a lot of cases, it's just easier, and you can recognize when boards don't fit together well yourself. But you sent me an email and you were talking about some examples of things where you recognize problems in the bidding process. Can you share that with us?
Okay, yeah, this is just the application of commercial bidding and public works bidding to the private sector. The private sector is not very sophisticated, and the contractors who work in it, although they're often extremely skilled, are not good communicators, and they don't even know what paperwork is.
Well, one of my best guys will send you a bid over text, but will never send you a spreadsheet with the costs.
Yeah. And some of the bids I've seen are just, you wouldn't believe. They're from guys who can do the work, the price isn't bad, but they can't, the product you get that tells you this is totally illegible. Anyway, one of the things you have to be careful of in your project is submittals. And what's a submittal? Well, when you form a project and you say, let's say I'm going to remodel my kitchen. You have kitchen cabinets, you have various dishwashers, sink, faucets, and other things that you're going to put in there, maybe trash compactor. You might have a couple of dishwashers if you have a larger kitchen.
Right.
So, but you don't know what they are. And the cabinets, you haven't picked them yet. You saw something in a magazine, on Google, and I like those, but you don't know what they are. And so how much do the cabinets cost? Well, the contractor doesn't know that. He just sees a picture and what dishwasher you pick or can get right now, or what type of bathroom fixtures, or what kind of granite you're going to have in there, what kind of floor. It may say granite countertops, but there's a lot of cost difference in that. So what they normally do is they give allowances
Right.
for those. So the contractor will bid, you say, I'm going to bid $50,000 for your kitchen. And out of that money, $2,000 is allowance for the granite, and $5,000 is allowance for all the appliances. And the way that works is when the time comes to buy those things, if the granite is less than $2,000, it's supposed to be a credit back to the owner. But if the granite is more than $2,000, you have to pay the contractor more money. And so all contractors, they always make their allowances low because they want their bids to look better. In fact,
Makes sense.
Yeah. One project can, sometimes they'll even throw in items that aren't really normally allowances, like there's a new roof on the plan for the room addition. And that's supposed to be in the price, but they'll make it an allowance. And that's a real red flag too. So what happens is,
So would you work with a contractor who would put roof as an allowance, or it's immediately disqualifying this particular person from working with that?
he's trying to get his bid to look better.
Right, but will you interview that person to check his qualifications, or it's already a red flag big enough that you don't want to talk to that person ever again?
Sometimes they just get goofy. That doesn't mean they can't do the work and do it well. And so what happens is, what you should do going in for those things that have allowances that, that are not decided, the bid document should tell the contractor the allowance.
Okay.
It really doesn't matter what it is, as long as they're all the same. So all your bids are pricing the same thing. And then later on, when you make your decision, you've got a budget placeholder, so you have a pretty good idea what the project will totally cost. And whatever you choose, you can move it up or down and stay the same. So you're exposed to no additional risk.
So kind of remove allowances out of your analysis. That's what I hear.
Yeah, you figure out all those things that need decision during construction, and you make them allowances. And you tell the contractor what number to bid those allowances at, so that all the contractors can bid the same.
I got it.
When you get an allowance that shouldn't be there, like the roof.
Right.
In this case, the roof, I think he priced it at like $4,000. And yeah, if you knew anything about.
Depends on the size.
That was way low. It was worth about 15. So what we did was we priced it in at 15 for the comparison of quotes, and he came out good. And he looked good in all the other areas. So the owner ended up taking him.
Oh.
Yeah, and he actually, the total cost of the roof was $13,500. So
it's closer to the 15 that you put in.
And so we had it budgeted in for comparison at 15,000. And actually the contract, you'd think, oh, we should get rid of him. But he turned out to be really good. And he did a lot of extra work, which if I was that contractor, I would have said, hey, give me more money. He just did it for free. Yeah. He went on to, he's doing it.
So he had good work ethics. He just didn't know how to bid.
You get that sometimes. Sometimes they just, I don't know, it's like they space out. And,
Well, I used to work with an architect. Unfortunately, he passed away, an older guy. He always told me that don't ever accept the lowest bid. Get the second lowest, because the guy who put the lowest either forgot something or did something malicious. He either screwed up on his own and doesn't know what he's doing. Or
the lowest bid is probably a guy who's going to go out of business. But the way to do it, the way I do it is, before you do any bidding, you sit down with your set of plans and you do a very rough budget for the breaking out the various items. And you don't break them out by remodel this bathroom. You break them out by trade. It's the master format for the architect's master format. It's universal to the industry. It's just never used in construction. And you go through that, and from that you'll have some idea, not maybe a very, very accurate one. You have some idea of what this project costs and where those costs are, so that when your bids come in, you can begin to signal bids. Like, for instance, let's say your budget says you do a high and low to get a likely bid range off your budget. And let's say the budget says this project is going to be from $300,000 to $340,000. That's right. Be our bid range. And you can, anything in there, and what you're going to find is they're going to start to cluster in there. But what happens if you get one for $260,000? That, maybe you made a mistake, but what you need to do is, before running out and hiring that contractor, you need to sit down and talk to him and make sure that he's got it right and that you've got it wrong. And then maybe they all come in at 360 and 370,000. Then you might look back and say, you know what, I've got a bunch of bad bids here. We need to rebid this project, or we need to sit down with who we think the best bidder is and try to negotiate.
Makes sense.
No high bids. So that gives you a window of confidence that you can look to. And I find that to be very helpful, especially when you do these home remodeling projects. When I used to do them back in the old days, before I had any sophistication, I'd go through and I'd say, well, okay, there's a lot of little walls being moved, a lot of, well, move this wall, 2 days, $5,000, and move this and do that, you know, all these little things, you add them up, and pretty soon you got like $60,000 worth of work and all these
Right.
sections and the, you know, make this new closet and all. And then what happened is when I actually get the job and be doing it, some days the crew would go in there and like, and you know, I had $60,000 in bid, and sometimes in 4 days they'd be finished with the whole thing. And sometimes in 4 weeks, they'd still be tinkering around with it. And so I realized that that process of bidding was a very bad one. And what it gives you when you have those little components in the project, that it's going to give you a very wide bid range. And that's what you have to be careful with.
I can imagine how bad the taste in owner's mouth is when he pays 60 grand for 4 days of work.
Yeah.
He probably would have a question like, what did my contractor do wrong, or something like that, where the corners were cut. Tom, we just talked about the increase of cost and the materials and how the budget for the project is being affected and how the bidding process should change because of the rapid increase in the cost of the building materials. You just mentioned that the steel and the lumber went up. Can you repeat these numbers and can you go over that once more?
Certainly. The year-over-year cost increase for all construction materials has been 24.7%.
That's huge.
That's huge. That's due to the pandemic, and it's due to the supply chain problems, and a lot of it's due to inflation.
Right.
Like 40% of all the money in circulation got printed last week or something like that. That chicken's got to come home to roost. Anyway, and so those increases have largely been in steel and lumber, and concrete has fallen by 3%. But that 24% and 25%, if you round it off, is a big problem to a contractor because they're operating on reasonably narrow margins and they have a high risk factor in their business.
Right.
And what they do is they're factoring in at least 10% on their material cost into the bid price for a project that's only going to take 6 months.
Oh.
If the price doesn't increase, it's a windfall profit. If it does, at least they're still in business. And so what I've had to do on my project control budget, when I calculate the amount of the project, is to allow for the fact that these contractors are now not bidding material in there. They're bidding labor only. And I just got in 2 bids labor only. And when you look at that, everything else, they don't cover it, they don't cost it out. And that's not just the appliances and the windows. That's every nail, every stick of wood, every piece of tape and glue that goes into the project. They're going to hand you a receipt at the end of the week and say, reimburse me.
Got it.
And so I've had to take and redo those project control budgets to show an estimate of labor only so we can make bid comparisons. Whatever the material is going to be. But the labor,
so you don't see much difference in terms of the cost for different contractors for materials, right?
Yeah.
It's not like there are secret ways to get it at better price.
Yeah. In fact, we just got 2 bids in a project in Mountain View. Both of them, we asked for lump sum hard bids with those specified allowances. There were $49,000 in allowances on each project. What came back was labor only bids. One was 185,000 and one was 225,000. And these are off of the same exact set of plans and specs.
It's a pretty large project, and I can imagine different people imagine doing it differently.
Yeah. And so, well, it's tough to estimate. It has a lot of little components and move this and do that and a little wall here and open up this ceiling and stuff. So it's a difficult project to estimate. One, it's easy to make a mistake on. You remember too, a lot of these contractors are essentially just small businessmen. If they have 2 or 3 jobs, they're extremely busy and cannot really take another one.
Right.
If you only have 1 job, they're a little bit hungry and they're looking around. So it's a pirate's market. You know, if they're busy and they have a backlog of work, they're going to bid high. If they're not busy, they're going to bid lower.
So it's changes depending on how busy this specific vendor is or contractor.
At most, their look ahead is 1 year. There are
Oh,
few exceptions. There's a couple of really good high-end home builders. They are booked up 2 to 3 years and are no longer accepting invitations to bid.
oh wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's a long term,
Yeah, yeah. That
because
is,
a lot of people that we talk to, they're saying they can build a house in 2 years. 1 year to finalize the plans, get approval, and 1 year to build.
yeah,
And if these people are booked for next 2-3 years, yeah, it's unreasonable even to try to get them to bid.
yeah. It is, and it can be difficult because they work with a lot of designers and architects, and those designers and architects depend on having a good resource of contractors. That's the contractor designer symbiotic relationship is very important to both of them.
Yeah, they kind of understand each other's way of operation, and it speeds up projects when it's the team that both people know each other.
Yeah, most of these really high-end guys, they don't bid hard bid and they don't bid labor only. What they bid is cost plus. Now it's illegal to bid to write a cost plus contract in California. What they do is they do a cost plus not to exceed, but the exceed is really high. But their reputation is so good that people just come in and hire them. And these are guys who they own these buildings that you see along the freeway. So it's not like this is a big purchase for them.
So tell me, when would be the best time to get you involved in the project? I hear different things. Sometimes what I hear, you're being pulled in after the drawings are done. Sometimes you were talking about the selection of architects. So when would be the best time to get you involved?
Anytime that you want help. I've been called for people who are just conceiving a project. In other words, they're sitting around the house and say, gee, I want to change this place. What can I do? And you can talk to them for an hour or two and give them your ideas and your inputs on cost and on timeline. And how long will this take? Approximately what will it cost? And sometimes I have other ideas for them too. I can say, well, maybe if you did this way or don't take out that wall, the ceiling will collapse. It's going to be really expensive.
Yeah, a little side effect.
Yeah, and give them a little pre-planning for an hour or two, kind of like the walkthrough with a prospective homeowner. Then that will allow them to formulate their ideas better. And I encourage them before they go talk to a designer to look around basically on the internet, Pinterest or Google, or even their friends' houses and see what they like. And then go get their design after they have at least mentally a basic scope of work in their minds. And that makes it a lot easier on the designer.
Yeah, we always recommend when you live in the neighborhood where there are some similar homes, always go to see the neighbor's project. Yeah. Because they already thought through how this house was designed and how it can be improved. And you don't have to copy that. But in a lot of cases, it's really helpful to see other people kind of work on a similar home.
Another thing that it's good for a new homeowner or a homeowner that's planning on a remodel to do is, and I've been so guilty of this myself, but don't just do one thing at a time. Create a master plan for the future.
Oh.
Maybe you don't have the money or the time or the desire to do it all, but at least have a master plan for what you want to do and work along it. To give you an example this is my example.
Mm-hmm.
About 25 years ago, my wife and I decided we didn't like our kitchen anymore. So we ripped everything out, we put some new cabinets in. And then about 3 or 4 years later, we realized, gee, if we expanded out the side of the house and put the kitchen out there, it'd be a whole lot of. So we ripped the whole thing out and built a new one. And it's that type of planning that it largely saves money if you can look ahead. You don't have to do it. You should at least have a trail to follow.
So you don't have to build something that you have to demolish it 2 years down the road because you want a bigger addition.
you suddenly realize, oh, I should have done this. Sit down, take some time, think about the whole thing, and then what parts can you do now?
That's very good advice. I hope a lot of people can hear that and take that advice. In terms of contacting you, what would be the best way to get hold of you?
You can either call me up or email me.
So I put Tom's phone number in the description of this video and the website, or
Yeah.
so that will be the best way to.
You need to remember it's constructionassistant.com.
Constructionassistant.com. Got it. Okay, so that's about covers what was on my mind. Anything you want to add from your side? Anything, any examples of the work that stands out, or what really interesting to listen to are the horror stories that you would be able to prevent by kind of utilizing your experience?
I'm Irish enough to love talking, and so I can give you a couple of things that are kind of notable takeaways. One is just recently I was out on a house, and it was a young couple with a like a 1-year-old baby. It was their first house. They're nervous, and you look at the condition report, and the condition report shows a 5-foot horizontal crack in the stem wall. Basically, horizontal cracks vertical cracks are pretty common, but horizontal cracks are an alarm bell. And because of that, they were hesitant to buy the house. A lot of people were hesitant to buy this house. So I looked at the crack, and when you got up close to it, it was right under the header for a giant, the king stud on a header for a giant window. You got up close to the crack, you could see it was obviously from form. So they had a form that started to let go like 55 years ago when they built this house, and it made this crack, and it had probably been that way since the day it was born. But they saved a couple of $100,000 because nobody had ever crawled up to that crack and looked at it. And you just put some epoxy in it and forget about it. It's not real. You can see where the form boards were and the whole thing. So it wasn't some usually new buyers see something like that and they automatically think the whole house is going to fall in a sinkhole within a couple of hours, and it's not true at all. Another one was a guy, again, it was a young couple, just bought their first house, and the condition report said, oh, the house, the roof is getting old. So when you read it, it sounded like the roof was in bad condition.
Right.
It had years to go. And so my recommendation to him was, look, a couple of things. Don't replace the roof now. Roof costs are unusually high. We're just coming out of the pandemic. There's a supply chain problem with roofs. It was a composition roof anyway. He had remodel ideas in the future, and that roof at least had 3 or 4 years left. And even if it started to leak, those comp roofs are so easy to repair and keep going. I said, no, don't do it. But that was another case. I get a lot of cases like, how much to remodel a kitchen? Everybody wants a new kitchen. How much for a heat pump? Stuff. Those are pretty simple.
But now you touched on one thing that we recommend our clients. For example, termite reports are in a lot of cases triggering a lot of worries from potential buyers and homeowners. And one of the common things would be subfloor damage in the bathroom. And what we're trying to say, like, if I would be a homeowner, I probably wouldn't touch it until I will be ready to remodel the bathroom. And that's exactly what you said about the roof, and kind of you validated me, so thank you.
It kind of boils down to they just need somebody to tell them what's absolutely common sense.
And it's not as scary as the property condition report really, or termite report spells it out.
Yeah, well, the condition report guys and the termite report people, they're trying to do a good job. And they want to put those things in, but they don't really make any judgment when they do that. They say, I found termites. And then they leave the rest to your imagination. Instead of, there's a little bit of termite damage here. If you ever remodel the bathroom, you're going to have to replace a few boards.
Yeah, but the bid, it looks scary in a lot of cases because they will bid for replacing tile with, like, removing the whole bathroom, putting generic tile in, after they put subfloor in, and it becomes whatever $8,000 project. But you probably will spend, I don't know, 12 or 15 to build the bathroom you want, and that work will be included, the upgrades or fixes to the wood, to the subfloor.
Yeah, it's, a lot of times it's better just to replace those things than to repair. It's not economically sensible to do half the job.
Right. Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate your expertise. And please contact Tom when you have any questions. And he's an amazing source of experience and common sense.
Thank you very much for spending the time in the interview. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I'll be happy to talk to any of your clients who want to call in and just chew the fat about construction.
We now have a new resource. We'll try to find a way to work together. Thank you.
Thank you.